Today's lesson is the power of the word. And in the past, I've done a similar talk that's titled The Power of Words. I will be talking about them both because they're very similar in concept. You might say one of them is like the micro aspect of it, and the other is the macro aspect of it. And so the first point to make out about the word is it's really big stuff. Really, really big stuff. How big? Well, let's see. Listen to how the Gospel of John begins. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made." So there you have it. Now, what's the question? How big is the Word? Well, according to the Gospel of John, in modern language, we might say it is source energy existing as infinite possibility. That's what it is. And for those of you who are familiar with the Gospel of John, you know that John is a very different perspective of Jesus than the other Gospels. Mark, Matthew, and Luke are referred to as the synoptic Gospels. Are you familiar with the term synoptic? Well, it means basically that they are similar stories and they're similar sequence, and there's a lot of similarities even in the wording. So in other words, you can kind of put together a general synopsis of them. John is not the case at all. In the Gospel of John was written about 35 years after Mark, which was the first one, and 65 plus years after the death of Jesus. And as you know, no one knows who wrote John or the Gospels, any of them, for that matter. There are no eyewitness accounts. We do not have any original manuscripts. Those are the facts, but we still work with it. Traditional Christianity takes the view of Jesus as God from the Gospel of John. You hear it all the time. I am the light, the truth. Nothing comes through me, through God, except through me. Well, from that perspective, Jesus, from the Gospel of John, Jesus becomes God incarnate from before time began. It is referred to as the cosmic Christ. So they've got four totally different portraits of Jesus in the Bible. We've got, in Mark, he becomes the apocalyptic preacher. In Matthew, he becomes the Jewish Messiah. In Luke, he becomes the teacher, the prophet. And in John, he becomes the cosmic Christ. Four completely different portraits of the same person. Now, which one's the right one? Well, if you know the answer to that, every biblical scholar on the planet would love to talk to you. You know what they say? In the Bible, you find the Jesus that you're looking for. Am I right? Now, this is important, not all these little details, because it formulates what we believe, and what we believe formulates our words and our thoughts, and so that's very important. So the power of the word, as I said, has two broad aspects, and I want to cover them both. The first is the element of the word known as the logos. The second is the element of the word as it applies to spoken words, how we use words. Here's what it says in our metaphysics book. Everybody realizes to some degree the effect of words. Every word has a threefold power. First is the force of the primal idea, that is the logos. Second, what has been put into our collective consciousness, race consciousness. And third, the intelligence and feeling given it to it by the speaker at the personal level. And so this is consistent with what we teach. As above, so below. In the image and likeness, a fractal. Bottom line, everything is one. I keep saying it over and over. The one expressing as the infinite many. When the first time I heard that, I said, yeah, I really like that. The one expressing as the infinite many. And you know that list I got, right? So are we one or are we many? Yes. So a big part of it also is how we react to words. Here's this quote. It says, "Words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, or to humble." All depends on how we use them. So, again, the difference of the word and words is at the level, if you might say. So let's begin with the first one. as principle. Both John and Genesis 1 refer to this idea. In Genesis 1, there's a series of God said statements. God said that so-and-so, and let there be light, and there was light. God said, God said. So basically what they're describing really is the process of manifestation. That's what they're really discussing here. How did things come into being? Have you ever thought about that? How did things come into being? In the Let's Get Metaphysical class, we talked about that. And philosophically, at the superficial level, it sounds kind of like a silly question. But philosophically, it's a very deep question. And it is, why is there something rather than nothing? I don't know if it ever occurred to you, but it occurred to me. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore said that we live in a spiritual universe. The New Thought movement brought into the introduction the idea of divine mind, which Reese just talked about with our lighting of the candles. And Paul wrote, in him we live and move and have our being. Now, in new language, and that's what I'm trying to get to about using new language. In new language, substituting him, because that suggests a being of some sort. And if you've ever heard my God talk, it's on the internet. It says God is not a being, supreme or otherwise. God is more like what Meister Eckhart said. God is beingness itself. And Meister Eckhart, I came across this quote this week. He said, I don't believe in a God. That's too limiting. I believe in the God of God. Whoa. Meister Eckhart was really out there. And I mentioned it last week, and I've said it before, but go in there and just Google Meister Eckhart quotes, and you're like, man, this guy, he was something. I really admire him. So in other words, Paul was saying that we live in a creative field of loving energy, and we move and live and have our being in it. And the divine mind, spiritual universe, as Fillmore said. And if you like imagery, which I do, I think imagery helps me a lot. Then think about the whole thing is this, that we are submerged in an ocean of creating, loving, intelligent energy. It's in us, it's around us, it's through us, it's everywhere, completely submerged in this field of energy. Wow. And as it turns out, quantum physics is corroborating that, in fact, this is pretty much the way things work. It's a fairly good description of how the apparent material world came into being, through consciousness. So using language that appropriate to the time, the Gospel of John was saying that consciousness brought it into existence. He didn't quite use that word. The language of Jesus and the disciples was Aramaic. You probably already know that. But when the New Testament was actually written, it was not written in Aramaic. It was written in Greek. And what they used to translate the logos, they said the word. But there's a problem with that translation. The logos cannot adequately be translated into the English language, meaning there is not a corresponding word that faithfully relays its true meaning. The closest accurate translation is not a word, but like a phrase. And that phrase is infinite possibilities. So, from our metaphysics book, once again, it says, in the original, the logos includes wisdom, judgment, power, and in fact, all the inherent potentialities of being. All the inherent potentialities of being. Now stay with me here. All that is or ever could be. Awaiting consciousness to bring it forth. Wow. I like Lynn McTaggart's term for this stuff. She calls it quantum soup. I like quantum soup. And again, in language that's appropriate to the time, and I didn't know Teresa was going to mention that, but what they're saying here is, in biblical terms, all things are possible with God. Inherent potentiality, infinite. So let's try with this idea of inherent potentialities and infinite potentiality. Let's try something. Let's reread the Gospel of John once again, replacing these words. In the beginning, okay, hold on. There's another phrase that we need to clarify. When was in the beginning? Smart Unity students, come on, let's hear it. Look, there's only the present moment. And every new moment is brand new. So you put the two things together, and the answer is that it is always in the beginning. Now, as the clock keeps ticking. It's always in the beginning. So we have in quantum soup this blending of the in the beginning and infinite possibilities. Now let's reread John. It would read like this. In the beginning, right now, are is infinite possibilities, and infinite possibilities are is with God, and infinite possibilities is our God. All things are made because at every moment there exists infinite possibilities. Now, that takes on an entirely different tonality. And why? Because it more accurately aligns with our current consciousness. See, I keep saying it. Those words were for a different consciousness. We can't continue to use these words because they don't mean to us what it meant to them. If I would tell that, if that was in the Bible, they're like, huh? Say what? And that's what they would say. So the power of the word, and the power of words has one thing in common. It is the key to manifestation. Words have power. Not in and of themselves, mind you, but of the power that we have given them. And that's what the deal is. And so we have to watch, like the old words have default power because we've already established that that's what it is. Like a carrot, we've established a carrot, we say carrot and this thing comes to mind. And we all do it because it's raised consciousness. So the same thing with words. And what did I say last week? We need to break the spell. So let's take a look at that aspect of the word when it comes to race consciousness and our use of the words. This is what Charles Fillmore said about words, or more specifically about thoughts. He said, every thought that goes forth from the brain sends vibrations into the surrounding atmosphere and moves the realm of things to action. Wow. Dr. Lipton says something similar. He said, we are literally transmitting vibrations into this field. But it's not a one-way street. The field is sending us vibrations. They just send us vibrations. So it's an interactive universe that we live in. And it's all vibrational. That's why music moves us like this, because we really get to experience the vibration that the music brings forth. And this is why I'm so excited about celebration. I want to talk to them about that. Listen, what are you doing next Sunday? No. Again, spirit and matter are one and the same thing. It's just a different spirit. Matter is simply spirit in expression. That's what the candles represent, and that's a really important thing for us to keep in mind. You know, Unity was founded in the late 1800s, and it is grounded heavily in anthropomorphic and old Christian terminology. It is. And that's all well and good, because again, they were trying to take baby steps. You know, when you present something new to people, the same thing can be said of Christianity and Judaism. They had to move in slow paces otherwise you can't completely alienate people if something is completely different. So they did it in baby steps. But you know, I've been here for a little over a year now, and between all the stuff that we do together, I've come to realize that you guys here at Unity Georgetown do not need to take baby steps. You're big boys and girls, spiritually speaking. And so we need to work on the language thing. And I'll be mindful of that. I tell you, it's one of my deals. Because in the Heart-Centered Metaphysics book, there's a chapter that's called The Language of Oneness. And it says this: when we use this old language, we keep one foot rooted in the old theology while trying to gain traction in the new. So we can't teach oneness and speak of separation and use separation language. That is the point of this whole lesson. We've got to, remember I told you about that coach last week who, I listen to the NFL station all the time, and they were talking about this one coach who is very successful. And they said, because he pays attention to the details down to every last little thing. And this is not really a detail. This is actually very important about the language thing. So I love sports, and for me, it's like, if you're going to steal second base, you got to get your foot off first base. You just do. Otherwise, it ain't going to happen. So get your foot off first base and get out there where there's nothing except you just open to spirit and say, well, listen, I'm listening. Tell me. Talk to me. And you know what? It's Lent season, so a perfect time for releasing. I release and I let go, right? So I'm going to leave you with one final quote that I came across that I really like about words. It says, watch your thoughts. They become words. Watch your words. They become deeds. Watch your deeds. They become habits. Watch your habits. They become character. And character is everything. So we have to ask ourselves today, are we using words that are setting us free? Are we using words that are holding us back? They have the power to do either one. Let's take a few moments just to contemplate today's message. Take this message of the power of the word and the power of words into our hearts. And we began like we always do by taking a few deep centering breaths. We relax into this now moment. We open up ourselves up to the one power and the one presence that dwells within us all. We align ourselves to that presence, and we allow that presence to shine forth through us and as us. And as we do this, we continue to make this adjustment to the outer world that better aligns with this one presence and this one power, so that we may become the beacons, not only to those around us, but to the entire Central Texas community, that this radiance from Unity Georgetown be all over this place. One such adjustment is being mindful of our words. Being ever aware that words have the power that we give them. Power to unite or power to divide. We proceed forward with words of unity today. And so it is.